So I was at Ground Zero yesterday. The September 11th Museum and the memorial and the buildings around it. The day after the anniversary. I was struck very much by the power of the place, and it got me reflecting once again on the notion of special place or sacred space, or just how all that works. And so I thought I'd explore that a little bit today, and we've talked about it before. It's a major Zen theme, actually, as we'll see. I thought especially I'd look at it through the sayings or insights of Master Joshu. Joshu is my favorite Zen patriarch, 9th century, 8th and 9th century China, where most of the masters are from that Tang Dynasty period. And very favorite for me, not only because of his insight and his personality, but also because Sensei Janet Abels, and now Roshi Janet Abels, was commenting on using him during that summer session in 2002, which was a big breakthrough for me. So I remember it for that reason. But it's also fitting because he lived to be 120. Now, actually, that's not a legend. Actually, we have good, documentary evidence for that period and for the people of that period. He died in 897. 778 is when he was most like Moses. Moses supposedly, and that's more of a legend, I think, but who knows, died at 120, and it was that last third of his life, between 80 and 120, in both cases, that they had, their major experience of leadership and teaching. And Moses, through the desert, Mount Sinai, because all these special places, it fits very much for that as well. But the first thing to realize is that in terms of all places being in one place, it's like all times being in one moment, accessible everywhere, and also in the sense, the first sense would be that open to all places, open to everything, so all places in one person, if you will. And that's what Joshu was especially famous for in a couple of the fundamental koans. His most famous insight is, if you want to know the way, stop picking and choosing. You've heard that before. In other words, stop judging or preferring or rejecting or clinging. Just take what comes. So open to everything, in other words. And, two of the most famous koans about him is, Joshu actually is a city. It's not his personal name. The masters were known by the name of their city. So I'm New York, or I'm Chicago, or I'm Boston. Sounds funny to us, but so the city where he was, and this is in the Blue Cliff Record, this koan, had 4 gates, and so he said, well, someone came and said, who's Joshu? Meaning the city, or maybe not, meaning him, and he replied, well, East Gate, North Gate, South Gate, West Gate. Kind of like the Book of Revelation, where the gates are open on like a square, like a cube on all sides, which is the way we should be. All our gates should be open, to everything. And it comes through also in a couple of the koans in here. This is a recorded sayings of Zen Master Joshu. So for a long time, the monk asked Joshu, I've been coming here and I only see a common wooden bridge. I thought they had a famous stone bridge. A stone bridge was fairly remarkable in those times. And so it's a way of saying, you're supposed to be Christ the Great Master, but, So Master said, you only saw the wooden bridge, you haven't seen the stone bridge. Okay, well, what is the stone bridge of Joshu? And the Master said, cross over, cross over. So it's a way of saying, be open to cross the bridge, but also, you're crossing over to the other side, as we say in Zen, you're going to the deeper insight, crossing the bridge. But another koan, the same introduction, the same conversation, And he says, and this is more to our point, instead of saying crossover, he says horses cross and donkeys cross. Meaning everybody, everything, but whether noble animals or more humble animals, everybody and everything comes in. So you're open to every direction. So you yourself can be open to all places. But there's another sense too in which all places, the whole universe is present in one place. And this gets closer to what I want to talk about. It's like, as I say, all times in one moment, all eternity, but all places in one place. In other words, the Absolute is perfectly present in any place. In any one place, it opens up to the infinite. And probably the most famous koan, which is in the Mumonkan, is what someone asks Joshua, well, who's myself, what's the Buddha, what's reality? And he says, well, do you see the oak tree in the garden? So any one little place, any one unprepossessing, little tree or flower in the garden is already the infinite. It's already you. It's already the Absolute. And it's remember the famous koan in the beginning of the Book of Serenity, where they plant a blade of grass to be the sanctuary of the Buddha. It's just a blade of grass, but the whole sanctuary. This is where the Absolute is enthroned. Right there. Or another koan which says, what's reality? Well, what is this? Well, it's Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru in Buddhist lore is like the mountain of reality, total reality. Like kind of like Mount Sinai or the Transfiguration or something. So, in other words, anything is Mount Sumeru. Any person, you are Mount Sumeru. It's like the tree of life, the inverted tree of life, in the Kabbalah or the German tree, the cosmic tree. That kind of notions that any one place is an opening to the Absolute. So you shouldn't be going. There's no distance between any one place and another. It's because they're all present together. So that's the koan right here. A monk asked, how far is it from the province of Zhou, in other words, Zhoushu, from here to the province of Chen? And the master said, 300 miles. Okay, but that's on one level. So the monk asks him again, but how far is it from that province to here? In other words, to being really right here. From there to being really here, what is it? How long is it? What's the distance? And the master says, no distance. No distance. It's all right here. Or the very last koan in the Mumonkan, where the master says, well, what's the way? And he draws a line in the air and says, here's the way. It's right here. It's right here. Or I like this one, Joshu. A monk asks, today is the 16th. In other words, as the footnote explains, it's when the summer training period is over and the monks were allowed to go out into the world. So the monk is eager to go out and travel, I should mock because I love travel. But a monk asked, so what about it? And Master said, east is east and west is west. Like, okay, go out if that's what you want, wherever you want. The monk said, well, what do you mean, east is east and west is west? And the Master said, paraphrasing Jesus, if you like, seek and you will not find. In other words, if you go out looking for, seeking, you won't find it because it's right here. Stop looking. Just wake up. It's everything is right here. I think there's so you don't have to go too deep. I found that the phrases came up, a couple of famous phrases came up here that I hadn't seen before in a number of the koans. A monk asked, what is the depth of the deep? How long has there been a deep? The master said. The monk said, the deep has been here forever. So the master says, well, fortunately you met me. You almost became someone who was deep to death. I like that phrase. Deep to death. You're trying to go way deep. No, well, just wake up to right here, right now. Stop trying to go deep. It's already here. And this is a good one too, about the mountain, the mountain we're supposed to climb, or Mount Sinai, or whatever it is, Mount Sumeru even. Monk asks, so what about when the high pinnacle is difficult to climb? So the master says, I myself am on the mountain. In other words, you don't have to go climb some mountain. You're on the mountain right now. If you're on the pinnacle already, if you just go. So the monk said, well, how do you deal with the steepness of the road? Oh, the road's no good. Don't worry about the road. You're on it. So why is it that no one arrives there these days, the monk asks. And the master said, well, it's a high pinnacle. In other words, it's really hard for people just to wake up to the here and now. That's how high it is, but really it's right here. But we just have to, really be awake to that. So, seek and you will not find. And this one I found very interesting. When is the road directly ahead? The road is directly ahead. It's right here and now. The reflections he has, so in other words, every place is right for the absolute. It's right there. So there's a superficial level which you can, be in every place and just kind of not really be there. But if you're in any place and really go deep, or just wake up to it, it's everywhere. It's everything. But it seems to me, going to places like Ground Zero, that there's an in-between space. An in-between reality. It is absolute form. And a couple of koans that deal with the three bodies of the Buddha, I think this is a really interesting way to look at it. So on the one level, you know the three bodies of the Buddha, I think I commented on this before. There's the Dharmakaya, which is the absolute Buddha nature. Then there's the Nirmanakaya, which is the kind of like the incarnation. It's the earthly Buddha, it's just phenomenon, the relative. But there's a third one, and I've always been fascinated by this. It's called the Sambhogakaya, which is the bliss body, or if you will, the combination of the two when it resonates and radiates, within, we might say, the chakras or our consciousness or our faculties or our body or our heart, that there's a special resonance, if we're awake, it can be like the blend of the two. So on one koan, the monks say, the master's saying, you must begin to cut off the heads of the Sambhogakaya and the Nirmanakaya Buddhas. Now, what does he mean by that? It means when you start practicing, don't get so involved with phenomena or emotional reactions, but try and focus more on, what's beyond, more the absolute. But you can't stay there. That's not an advanced practice. So therefore, remember, right here and now, right here in the phenomenon, in the relative, is the absolute. So this is another koan. Monk asks, what is the Dharmakaya? And the master said, they're Nirmanakaya. Right? So right here and now is the body of the Buddha. This very moment is the pure land. The monk said, no, I'm not asking you about the Nirmanakaya. He doesn't get it. The master says, just pay attention to the Nirmanakaya. And be present here and now to whatever is. Exactly. And then another one along the same lines. A monk asks, among the three bodies, which is the original body? And you expect some answer like, oh, the Dharmakaya. No, but he says, the master says, it's impossible to take away any one of them. Now, this is my own idea, but how would I apply this to a place like Ground Zero or to other places where there seems to be a special presence? You know? I mean, sometimes I think it comes out of a geographical energy, like in where I was, the summer of Sedona, a famous place in Arizona, or the medieval cathedrals or monasteries, which were purposely and consciously built along energy lines. You know, I think places like Machu Picchu and these places, the same thing. They were sensitive to a particular power, a particular resonance, or a particular power, a presence of energy in particular places. Now, the Absolute is present everywhere, but this kind of particular resonance of it, you know, the bliss body, or where it's resonating, you know, on that emotional level, is in special places, I think. So that's kind of the geographical way. But I think I know it's also true, you know, in places where things have happened, or where there's a special spiritual presence. So I remember visiting Cambodia, you know, Angkor Wat. It's easy to understand. That might have been a geographical thing already, but certainly the presence, you know, the spiritual presence of so many pilgrims in these vast, these marvelous, you know, temples. I was overwhelmed, you know, on an emotional level, you know, on a spiritual, on all sorts of levels, by this energy that was there. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about here. Or another place in Cambodia where there was where people had been held prisoner during the Pol Pot regime. So all the horror and the grief and the murder was there, and yet I felt this incredible presence which included all that, but which somehow, by then, you know, 40 years later, was transcending itself, and through all that, reaching some kind of triumphant victory, which shouldn't surprise us as Christians, because that's what we mean by the Passion and Resurrection, which is a paradigm of reality. So I felt something very similar at Ground Zero, and I think it's there for people to feel, if you're just, you know, sensitive enough to it, that, who knows, there might be something geographical there too at the base of Manhattan, but it's, above all, it's what happened there. And I just had, you know, the heart chakra especially, and I just felt, wow. And it was sustained the whole time I was there. It was wonderful to see, if you've been there recently, I haven't been in about a year, to see how the roads are opened up, the landscaping is opened up, the new buildings, World Trade 3 is open now, and it's really quite beautiful. And of course, the memorial and the museum. I'm a member of the museum, so I went inside and talked to some tourists from England. We talk about geography. They are from York and New York, and so all places come together. But there really is this Sambhogakaya type of presence where there's a special energy. You know, as I say, you can be on a superficial level of the phenomenon, or you can find the absolute everywhere. But there are special places where there's kind of that third body being manifest. You know, where there's particular power, and if you're attuned to it, and it may require some spiritual effort to be able really to be attuned and connect to it, in all these examples and beyond, then there really is something there. So I think I find that an interesting way of approaching it in terms of the three bodies, the three manifestations. So it's not just absolute and relative. There's that emotional and spiritual and rich in-between area where, you know, your chakras are tingling, you know, because of special circumstances and special energy presence. So I wish you that experience.